we get started, I just want to do some quick introductions. I'm Karen Rasmussen. I'm one of the co-founders of Well Street, and I'm also the organizer of today's 30-minute webinar. For those of you who know Well Street, welcome back. And for those of you who are new to our company, Well Street is a national provider of employee wellness, delivering holistic health solutions to the workplace. I'm very excited to introduce today's speaker, Well Street's other co-founder, Dr. Jaty Tam. We call her Dr. Jaty around here. Dr. Jaty is a naturopathic doctor. You may have seen her at conferences and speakers events as she is quite popular. One of Dr. Jaty's specialties is flu and infectious disease prevention. I'm sure you're going to receive very useful information in today's presentation. As you will discover, Dr. Jaty is highly passionate about prevention. I want to remind you that towards the end of the presentation, for about 5 minutes, we'll be doing Q&A. If you have questions for Dr. Jaty, please type them in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. We will do our best to answer all your questions at the end of the webinar. I'm now going to bring you back to Dr. Jaty.
Hi. Hi, thank you, Karen, and thank you, everybody, for logging in today and joining our webinar at 3 p.m. right in the middle of the afternoon. Thanks for that introduction, and we only have half an hour, so let's jump right into the topic of the day, which is talking about flu. So looking at the flu statistics in Canada, we see that only 10 to 25% of Canadians contract the flu each year. And for a lot of people, that number seems really low. And when you think about yourself or when you think about coworkers or your family members, most people tend to get sick in the flu season, probably about 1 to 3 times a year. Some people a little bit more, some people a little bit less. But you probably think that you catch the flu every year, maybe about 1 time. And so this number of 10 to 25 seems pretty low. The reason for that is because most people don't actually have the flu. They may have a cold, or they may just have a sore throat, or some other kind of virus. They may not necessarily be the flu. And when we look at those numbers, it is much higher. So 1/3 of Canadians in any given month has either a sore throat, the flu, or some kind of cold virus. And that means that's affecting 1/3 of your workforce at any given month throughout the flu season, which is pretty significant. So when we look at any month, so let's take next month in October, 1/3 of your workforce is going to have some kind of upper respiratory tract symptom. What are they going to do about it? Statistics show us from a Queen's University study that 2/3 of those employees are going to do some kind of self-treatment at the first sign that they get that cold or flu. And that could be running to Shoppers and picking up an over-the-counter cough medication. Maybe it's going into their cupboard at home and picking up some vitamin C, or taking something at night to help them sleep, like some Vicks Vapo Rub. So some kind of self-treatment. But 1/5 of those people who are sick in your workplace are going to do absolutely nothing. They're just going to ignore their symptoms and wait for it to get better. And really, the reality is that with the flu and with the cold, you will get better even if you do nothing, but it may impact how severe your symptoms are, as well as how long your symptoms last if you choose to do nothing. But they will resolve themselves on their own, and 1/5 of people know that, and so they just ignore it. So when you have somebody who's sick in the workplace, so let's say you have an employee and her name is Susan, and her kids are school age, and one of them comes home one day and has a little bit of a runny nose and a sore throat. But Susan's feeling fine. She hasn't caught anything yet. She goes to work the next day, still feels fantastic, touched her face at some point, and then touched a doorknob. And then right behind her, Rob was getting the door, and he touched the doorknob too. The chances are, even 1 day before your symptoms start to show, up to 7 days after your symptoms start, you're infectious. So there is a very good chance that Susan, even though she wasn't feeling any of her symptoms yet, she may have been infectious and passed something on to Rob behind her one day before her symptoms started showing. And even if her symptoms only lasted 3 or 4 days, it isn't until 7 days after the first day your symptoms start that she's completely clear and not infectious anymore. So throughout that whole time, there's still the chance that she could be spreading that cold or flu virus on to other people at work. The average worker is absent about 2.8 days in the U.S. from the cold or the flu alone. So a lot of these statistics will actually be for the flu, but when we're talking about the flu, it's actually really hard to get really concrete numbers for the flu, because a lot of people will say, yeah, I think I had the flu, but unless you actually go to the lab and do a throat swab and actually culture that and find out if it was a flu virus or a cold virus or what type of virus it was, we don't really know. So just so that you guys know, when we're talking today, when I say the flu in terms of statistics, we're often talking about upper respiratory tract infections with flu-like symptoms. So the average worker in the U.S. is absent for 2.8 days because of the flu, which could be any kind of upper respiratory tract infection, throughout the cold and flu season. But if they're infectious for 8 total days and they're only absent for 2.8 out of those days, it means that they have a big window still where they're spreading the other germs around. 83% of employees report going to work with flu symptoms instead of calling in sick. And really it's because they'll probably take the 2.8 days where they feel the worst off, and then when they feel a little bit better, they'll probably still end up returning back to work so they're not missing too many days. But what happens is that they're still spreading it around. Absenteeism alone in the U.S. from the flu specifically costs all the companies in the U.S. about $15 to $20 billion a year. Presenteeism, which means going to work even though you're sick, costs employees $10 to $12 billion just in lost productivity alone. And then there's also costs to consider, like medical costs, such as antibiotics and other medications, hospital stays, that can be a cost to the employer as well. When we look at presenteeism, so when a worker comes into work even though they're not feeling well, they're definitely less productive. It takes them longer to get better because they're not at home resting. They may be under stress. They may be pushing their body more than they need to. But the biggest impact of presenteeism is that they're coming to work sick and likely infecting their colleagues. When an employee comes to work with the flu, they increase lost work days by 10 to 30%, which is a huge impact on absenteeism. And that number is why a lot of employees and workplaces have chosen to provide a workplace flu shot program. 70% of Canadian companies, as of 2011, were providing some kind of workplace flu shot program. And so the question is this effective in preventing the flu at the workplace? There's another statistic I'll talk about here, which is that 60% of adults are choosing not to get the flu shot. So even though 70% of companies are offering it, 60% of their employees are choosing not to get it, which is over half, which is quite a significant number. Why are they not choosing to get it? Well, 74% of people surveyed just think that it's not necessary. They don't think they need the flu shot, and that's why they're not getting it. 13% of people may have thought, yeah, it might be a good idea, but they didn't think it was a good enough idea to actually do it because they just never got around to it. And a smaller percentage of 7% of people were just fearful of the shot for a variety of reasons, and that's why they didn't get it. But the biggest number here is that 74%, which shows you that people are not getting it mostly because they think that it's not needed. So should we be worried that even though the flu shot is effective at prevention, that so many people are choosing not to get it, and that the reason they're not getting it is because they aren't convinced that it's going to help them? Does that mean that we're going to see a rise in flu cases as the number of people getting the flu shots continues to decline, which it is year after year in Canada? Well, the flu shot alone is not a silver bullet. The vaccine itself only includes 3 strains of the flu. So the World Health Organization every year makes a prediction on 3 strains of the flu, which they think will be the most widely spread strains for any given year. And they make this estimation months in advance so that there's time for the vaccine manufacturers to develop the vaccines. So even if somebody does choose to get the flu shot, which is that 40% of people, they're still vulnerable to over 300 other flu strains. They'll be set for the 3 strains that are in the shot, but there's over 300 other strains that are out there circulating, as well as over 200 different types of viruses that can cause the common cold. So even though the flu virus is really effective at preventing the prediction of what may be the most popular strains out there in a year, it doesn't mean that you're protected against everything. There is no 100% guarantee of not getting the flu when you get the flu shot. So what are our flu prevention options? The flu vaccine is definitely a good option. It is highly effective at preventing those top 3 strains for the year. Hand washing campaigns are also really effective. That's what prevents, so even if Susan is sick, if she were to wash her hands before she touches that doorknob, that's what's going to prevent her from passing that on to Rob behind her. So hand washing is very effective, and that includes alcohol, hand sanitizers, as well as washing with warm water and soap. Sneezing into a tissue or your elbow is also really good at preventing spread when somebody is already sick. And we've seen a lot of campaigns around that, both in the school systems as well as out in our public transportation systems over the past few years. And then encouraging employees not to come to work when they're sick is also a great way of preventing that 10 to 30% rise in absenteeism that we saw earlier when somebody comes into work sick. But what we get asked all the time is this it? Is this the end-all and be-all of flu prevention, these 4 things that we've been doing for years, and yet people are still coming to work sick? Is this all we can do? The answer from a naturopathic point of view, as a naturopath, I will always say that building a really strong immune system is what's going to make the difference between whether you get sick or not. So being exposed to somebody who's sick doesn't mean that you're definitely going to get sick. And we've all experienced this. Let's say you're sitting at a meeting, it's yourself, your coworker, let's say her name is Jasmine, and then someone else across from you, another coworker who is sick, and you're all sitting there, and then the next day you start to feel a little bit of a tickle in your throat, and you can feel it, you're going to get sick. But you see Jasmine, and she's totally fine. She hasn't caught it, and you're sitting at home the next day, sick as a dog, wondering why wasn't it Jasmine? What was the difference between why she was so lucky that she didn't get sick? And the difference was likely that all she had was a stronger immune system, and that was the difference, whether she picked that up or not. Having a strong immune system also will affect the duration of how long you are sick for when you catch any kind of virus as well. There have been a lot of studies out there about how to boost your immune system, how to keep it strong to prevent the flu and the common cold. These are a few that have been very widely studied. Getting adequate sleep, having adequate vitamin D levels, which in Canada is pretty hard to come by unless you're supplementing, managing your stress levels, having a healthy diet, getting proper fitness and movement throughout your work week. And then there have been a whole host of natural health supplements, so herbs and vitamins and minerals that have also been studied and shown to be very effective in boosting your immune system and preventing flus and colds. And I want to highlight one of these natural health supplements today. The remedy is called Pascoleucine Forte. It is a seasonal immune booster, and it's a unique combination of herbal and homeopathic medicines. It comes in these little vials, glass vials. It is made by a company called Pasco. The product has been registered with Health Canada. It's been on the market for over 60 years. It's widely used in Germany by both medical doctors as well as holistic practitioners, and in Canada it's widely used by naturopathic doctors. Wells Street's Natural Flu Clinic uses this product, the Pascoleucine Forte, and very similar to your conventional flu shot clinic. It's done in a drop-in format. It's done on-site at your workplace. And like the flu shot, it can be done as an injection, but unlike the flu shot, it can also be done orally. And from practitioners who have, including myself, who have done both oral and injectable doses in their private practices, most people are reporting that there is very little difference in efficacy. Both the oral and injectable dose are equally as effective. It is done very quickly, less than 5 minutes, very much like the flu shot. And because it's administered by a naturopathic doctor, it can be covered under the employee benefits under naturopathic services. What's great about the natural flu clinic is that this remedy can be done on its own. So for people who, those 60% of people that we were looking at before who choose not to get the flu vaccine, mostly because they think it's not necessary, it's not going to work, a lot of them are looking for another alternative. And so those people could get this natural flu remedy completely on its own and get a really good seasonal immune boost. But for those 40% of people who are still getting the flu shot, and maybe they're still, you know, even though they get the flu shot every year, they're still getting sick here and there, or maybe they have a really weak immune system and they want to boost it, or maybe they know that it's going to be a really stressful season and they want to have some extra support, they could also get the seasonal immune booster along with their flu shot. So it's both effective on its own and alongside the flu vaccine. And because it is a general immune booster, it's strengthening your own body's defense system. It's not specific against specific viruses. It's generally protective for all viruses, including the ones that are covered by the vaccine, those top 3 flu viruses, as well as all those other cold and flu viruses that we were talking about before that are not covered by the vaccine. It's safe for everyone, including women who are pregnant and breastfeeding. So the natural flu clinic is recommended by the manufacturer to be administered in the flu peaks, which are typically in October and January. However, when we look at this graph here, it shows us the last 8 years of flu trends. And we can see that in October over the past 8 years, there's only been one major peak. It was a really, really major peak, but that was a few years ago. Last year, which is this one right here, we had a pretty significant peak, but it came towards the beginning of January. The rest of the years before that, they tended to be a bit of a slow rise, a bit of a peak around January and then down again, but it seems to start around the September-October time. From what I've seen so far in my own private practice, we are seeing people already coming in with the flu right starting at the beginning of September. So it seems we might, and we have no way of predicting this until we actually experience it, but we might be looking at another one of these years where we have a big peak early on in the year. So we're looking towards a potentially earlier peak this year. Let's look at a success story of another company who has been administering this Pasco-Leucine Forte immune booster remedy for over 8 years at their company, and that is TELUS Mobility. TELUS had this increasing demand from their employees for more natural options. There were a whole number of employees who just didn't want to get the flu shot, but they still wanted something. They wanted some kind of immune support, and they were asking their employer to provide that for them. So TELUS partnered with some naturopathic doctors across Canada, and right alongside their free flu shot program, they were offering this natural immune boosting remedy. And what they reported after doing this for 8 years was that the great thing, other than providing their employees something that they were asking for, it also allowed the ability to educate their employees as a whole about prevention, as well as launch an awareness campaign on how to adopt healthy behaviors throughout the entire flu season and throughout the rest of the year. So that's my part, and I'm going to turn things over again to Karen, and she's going to talk about the types of flu season solutions that we have at Wall Street. And then after that, we'll do some Q&A based on the questions that you submitted. So if you have any questions about what I've said so far, please feel free to type them in that little chat box. Okay, on to Karen.
Thank you, Dr. Jaty. Okay, everybody. Wait, I think I'm starting to get a tickle in my throat. But anyway, thanks, Dr. JD. And as you expected, I'm just going to do a very quick sales pitch on the types of flu prevention solutions Wells Street has to offer at your workplace. I promise it will only be a minute, and then I'll bring you back to JD, and we can start to answer some of your questions coming in. So as we talked about, today the Natural Flu Clinic provides your employees with options and the opportunity to prevent the colds with a natural remedy and help them build a stronger immune system. The Natural Flu Clinic is a drop-in clinic. It's provided on-site at your workplace. The formula is administered by a naturopathic doctor, and companies across Canada, we do offer this across Canada, they can book the Natural Flu Clinic between October 1st and the end of January. The clinic is great to run as a complement to your traditional flu vaccine clinic or to run on its own. Seminars, as you may be aware, Wells Street has a range of wellness topics supporting workplace health year-round. The two most popular seminars during the flu season are Beat the Flu and Immune Warrior. Both these seminars provide your employees with prevention knowledge and fantastic tips. Finally, the last thing I just want to point out here are workshops. Workshops are a little different than seminars. In a workshop, employees are together in a group, and they will learn more about prevention while having the opportunity to ask questions about their own individual requirements. This is really great forum for employees who require advanced immune boosting and information and have similar interests as well. So there you have it. I want to point out that, like any good initiative, wellness initiative, communication is key. So with all these solutions that Dr. JD and I'm mentioning today, everything includes a communication kit with posters and flyer templates to help increase your prevention awareness and flu program participation and engagement. So I'd like to just take the last few minutes, as we promised, to answer some of your questions. I can see that there's been quite a few questions that have come in, and I think we're going to get you back to your work on time. We have about 5 minutes to do that. So one of the first questions, I just want to remind you as well, for those of you who are typing a question in, you have the little box on the right-hand corner. Okay, I have a question here from Jane. Jane, is the natural flu remedy safe for everybody, and are there any side effects? Dr. JD, can you answer that one?
Yes. The natural remedy is safe for, I'm going to say it's safe for most people because it is a herbal and homeopathic remedy. Typically it is safe for most people. There have been some warnings from the manufacturer about people with autoimmune conditions, and that is mostly because we are strengthening the immune system. So if you have a specific condition where you're taking medication to override your immune system, then we don't want to interfere with your medication. So that's the only time that it may not be safe for somebody, and really in my own practice and in administering this for years, I actually have never come across somebody who I wouldn't give it to. But we do screen everybody. We have everybody fill out a medical form that allows the naturopathic doctor who is administering the remedy to ensure that it is safe for them specifically, as well as we provide a handout afterwards about healthy practices with some tips, other tips about how to stay healthy throughout the flu season, and it also gives them an opportunity, if they experience any kind of adverse reaction or side effect, that they can contact us and we'll deal with it appropriately and treat them appropriately as well. But as I've said, it's such a gentle and effective remedy. I've never, in the hundreds that I've administered over the years, I've never seen anybody have a side effect or any kind of adverse reaction from it. So it is very safe. But there is that warning out there.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks, Dr. JD. We have another question that has come in, and the question is from Bill. Hi, Bill. Thanks for your question. The question is, what is the cost? Dr. JD, I'm going to answer that question. So the natural flu remedy that we're talking about, the drop-in clinic, it's $25 per person, so that's what the employee pays, and it is covered under naturopathic benefits, so the employee will receive a receipt. Wells Street provides the naturopathic doctor on site at an hourly rate, and the hourly rate is $150 per hour, and it will be based on the employee population that you have at your workplace to determine how many hours you would require a naturopath. But that's certainly something we could discuss, and you can contact me directly. Oh, I see another question here. What day, when can you offer the flu clinic? So yes, we can offer it from October 1st to January 30th. And regarding what time of the day, we have companies that ask for different types of hours, perhaps lunch hour, morning. We're very flexible. We can offer it any time of the day that the company requires. Okay, I have another question. David, thank you, David. In terms of where we can offer the natural flu clinic across Canada, so you have offices in BC and Alberta. Yes, we can offer the natural flu clinic. So Wells Street has naturopathic doctors and consultants that provide the remedy coast to coast. So we're pretty much covered in that respect. Okay, I think that's it. And it does look like we're about to wrap up here. And we certainly don't want to keep you away from the rest of your day, everybody. So there you have it. I want to really thank everybody once again, and thank you, Dr. Jaty, for the webinar. We hope you enjoyed today's Healthy Flu Clinic and prevention strategies. We hope that if you'd like a copy of the webinar, absolutely email us, and we will send you this presentation. Have a wonderful day. It's hard to believe that the flu season is around the corner on a sunny day like today. But that said, we hope that you find the information useful and valuable in planning your flu season and your flu prevention strategies for the months ahead. Thanks, everybody, and bye for now.